We good?
Yes.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Let me just finish up here, and then we will go ahead and get started. I want to thank everyone for coming, and for those who have been waiting so patiently for this to start. It's been kind of a mad rush today, as tomorrow starts Wizard World in Illinois, which we will be at. So I've been kind of scrambling, getting everything together. And okay, let's begin. Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm Tim Von Rieden, joined with Deandra Pop. Say hi.
Hello.
And we're here with ConceptCookie.com, and we're doing a live stream today. We do these every Wednesday at 2 p.m., and that's Central Time. And if you're outside of the States, that's -5 GMT. And today we're going to be looking at dramatic lighting. Now, I'm going to be working on a fan art piece because Concept Cookie will be having a booth this weekend at Chicago's Wizard World. Now, it's not technically in Chicago, even though all the advertisement and banners are for Chicago. It's actually in Rosemont, Illinois. So if you are somewhat close to the area, you should definitely stop by. I will be selling a bunch of buttons and prints, and this is the first time that I will bring, I don't know if I have one up here. We're going to be selling the Art of Blender books that CG Cookie published earlier this year / kind of last year, and we're going to be doing quite a discounted rate. So if you guys are in the area, I would love to chat. So today, in today's live stream, I'm going to be finishing up, like I said, the fan piece, but it also has kind of a learning element because for these villains that I'm drawing, I wanted to have a different lighting scenario in each of them. So let me go ahead and show you what I mean. Let's go ahead and get started. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them on the side. We have Deandra here who will be constantly checking them and then kind of feeding the questions to me, unless if she can answer them herself. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen out for you guys. So this is the full illustration that I'm working on. So it has, I don't know if you guys even know what Digimon is. I don't know if I'm showing my age a little bit. But this is Digimon. I really liked it as a kid, and I really liked the villains. They had interesting designs, and the concept art was always so interesting to me. So the bottom two are the vampire and the clown, and they're kind of finished, but you can kind of see how they have a different lighting scenario. Now with the top one, his name's Devimon, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to have a pretty intense kind of white bright light coming from the left side, and then we're going to have sort of like a fire behind him, or something that kind of gives the impression that there is a flame or some kind of intense heat that's behind him that'll give him this really intense rim light, and then it'll make his wings that are normally pretty flat colored because it's, I mean, the cartoon shows them flat colored, but I want to show some transparency to them, or not even transparency, subsurface scattering to them, so you can see the light kind of bouncing around and mixing in with the blues of his wing color, so you get to see that nice orange blend. So I think I'm going to be doing this on a different Photoshop file though. So let me go ahead and share out the other one. Okay, so here he is, and I kind of just, I wanted to solo him out so that we don't get distracted by the other two, and I can make it larger so you guys can actually see it. Okay, so I already kind of have a basic setup of what I wanted to do with him. So I kind of have like the foundations laid out, and I always talk about this even in any tutorial, how I always want to lay out my foundations first and then get into detailing. Where sometimes I'll give subtle hints to the details, like the light up here or the shine, but for the most part I want to save the highlights and things that are more of the finer details more toward the end. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my chalk brush because I've been doing the other two mainly in the chalk brush, so I want to keep that consistent here as well. And I'm also going to do my best not to zoom in until later. I think that's one thing that artists always feel the need to always zoom in and out, but try your best to stay zoomed out as long as you possibly can, and it'll make your time much more efficient because then you get to see it at the larger picture, you work faster, your brushes are usually a little larger, and then when you really want to make it look, pop and make it look as detailed as you want, that's when you can zoom in, but even during the detailing phase, I would still try to stay zoomed out first and see how long you can stay zoomed out for. And like I said, I definitely want the bright white light, or I don't know if it's like a blue or even moonlight, some kind of a intense lighter color light. I want it to be coming somewhat from this general direction. Let me draw a better arrow there. So I definitely have to make it consistent all the way throughout and make sure that it's believable. Like the lighting scenario, even though this is a picture and I'm, drawing in the lighting, that it feels consistent and it feels like this is an actual subject matter placed in this lighting scenario.
All right, we have a few questions lined up.
Okay.
Primarily Blue asks, I've been practicing with the Atlas of Human Anatomy for artists. I've been using shapes and wondering, how do you draw out the head, ribs, and shoulders in different positions?
The head, ribs, and shoulders in different positions?
Mm-hmm.
I would. So, if you were here last week, I kind of gave a quick demo of how I draw my quick sketches. So I always start with a backbone, and I'll do it really quick on here. And then I always draw the shoulder length. So let's say you wanted a different position where like his right shoulder was closer than the left shoulder. I would start it off like this. And these circles give me the impression of the shoulders. Because then from there I can kind of work the arms. But I got to keep this consistent all the way throughout. So when I lay his hips out, I'm going to do the same thing. So the hip that is closer to the camera is going to be larger than the one that's farther away. Have that slight perspective to it. And then from there you can kind of play with the rest of the body, fill in the different shapes from there. But I would always start with the solid, or I always start with the backbone. I don't say every artist should start like this way, but it's just one way that seems to really help me when I'm starting out my sketches. So try working with the backbone and then the shoulders and then the hips. And go from there and see if that works for you.
All right. And next we have by Shelby Randolph. I decided to switch my future career to concept design because of your courses. I found that I really love it. Any tips on starting in concept design and getting a job?
This is something that's asked a lot, and I think even Deandra might be able to attest to like how you get started. But I would say you need to get recognized, and that sometimes is really hard to do. I think a lot of artists don't realize that you need to kind of market yourself as well as practice your skills and get better in your digital work. So I think the best thing that you could do, or at least what I've kind of seen just through experience and through other people, is start somewhere on like DeviantArt, do commission work, and maybe do some fan pieces. Because not only does the fan pieces get you recognition, but then you can also practice on improving your skill level. So it's kind of like one of those 2-for-1 combos. But what would you say, Dee?
Same thing. Just start making stuff, really, and posting it online for like someone. Like if you're good, someone will like recognize that you're good and give you work. So definitely just like establishing like an online um, like persona and like getting your artwork up and just you have to get noticed. That's what it's like all about. And if you're good, you will be noticed. At least that's what I think.
Yeah, I fully agree.
And then just obviously drawing every day and getting to that point of being like good enough. And then the jobs will come to you.
Yeah,
And also, well, it helps to have like connections from like friends.
that was what I was just about to say.
Mhm.
What's that word? I always forget networking.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know one of my friends, Puichi. That's like his biggest like goal is to always network and find excuses to network. And
Mhm.
it does pay off because then that one person that you connected with. Maybe they have a job opening at their studio next month, and he asked if you're interested. Like it's something just as simple as that, and who knows where that could lead. Oh no, really quick, I'm trying to draw the impression of his wrinkles that he has, and maybe I should pull up because I know I have it on my screen, but I'll show you guys what he looks like. So this is what this is a screen cap of the character, but he has these wrinkles that always give him this like furrowed brow look. So I'm trying to recreate that, but I also have to keep that lighting in mind. So since I have the lighting coming from up above, I'm going to give a ridge, and to do that, I'm just going to kind of give a slight lighter blue color on the top, and then on the bottom half, make it more of this shadow color. So I don't want to make it super dark. I just want to go toward what I've already laid in on my character. Then once I blend it enough, I should give that impression of that wrinkle that I'm going for. All right, that's it.
Alright. Next we have by Christy, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, McAvey? Whenever I start something, I always seem to get bored of it and then abandon it. How do you continue with the
Whew. Man, this sounds like a DeAndre question. But I guess really quick, I would say don't abandon it. Just put it off for a little while. So sometimes if I'm working on something and I'm really not feeling it, I'll either walk away from it or I'll put it off for like another week and then I come back to it. But I never just abandon a piece for the most part, unless if I really just feel like I've made so many mistakes that it would probably be easier if I just started over. I would say I've done that maybe just a couple times where I just felt it was unfixable, or it would just save me a lot of time if I just restarted. But if you're getting bored of a piece, you really got to push through a little bit because sometimes you got to get through the not so fun parts of the digital art stuff to get to the fun part. So like for me right now, this isn't really the fun part, like doing this kind of stuff, but once I get into the finer detailing, like that's really fun to me. Or doing like color harmony, that's really fun to me. But sometimes you gotta do like what I would probably call the grunt work to get to the fun stuff. Deandra?
I know, I agree. It's just pushing through. Sometimes you do need to walk away to get like a fresh perspective. Um, just basically everything that you said. I It's not usually that I get bored with a piece. It's that I like the sketch that I did, and then I'm afraid that I lose the integrity of the sketch like as I start rendering it out. But
Mm.
um, just keep going. You can always come back to it. Just everything that Tim said. All right. Zoe Delenn asks, have you ever just thought about using food or furniture as inspiration for drawings? Sometimes when I don't have any ideas, I just use some donut and use the colors and make a piece of it.
That's really funny because the next exercise that I have planned is all about doing food.
Really?
Yeah, because I saw it was like a commercial that turned I'm not even gonna try to explain it, but pretty much it was like a kiwi and strawberry and a watermelon. And I really looked at it, and when I was looking at it, I didn't see it as just the fruit. I saw like the highlights, speculators that you could draw, the color, the subsurface scattering, especially with the kiwi, the way that they cut it, you could really see the light through it. And I think that when you start to see, it's like training your eye. And I think doing that with food is a great way to train it because then you start to see everything as art and how you can implement it or integrate it into your own work. So something as simple, because this kind of goes back to the candy exercise that we had a few weeks ago, where yeah, it's just candy, but there's so many different properties to it that when you actually try rendering it out and really thinking about it, you learn a lot in the process. So yeah, I definitely think you can take food and use it as inspiration. Admittedly, though, I've never used a donut,
Hmm.
so that would be a first.
Okay, next we have Louise Hampson. Hi, Tim and Dee. I'm interested in knowing if, as a female, you find it harder to get jobs as an artist, and whether you have to work harder to get noticed in the gaming industry.
I'm gonna be careful with how I answer this, but I will say, just from the friends I have, I would say it's actually easier for a girl to get a job in the industry. Now, I'm not trying to say for, I think just because it's such a male-dominated industry, or that's what people usually associate with like video games and the standards for like guys should like video games. But there are just as if you look at the actual statistics, just as many girls play video games as guys. But I think when you go in for an interview, usually I would I would say, oh man, I don't want to dig myself a hole, but I will say I don't think it's harder for girls. I would say it is a tad easier, but it does, no matter what, it always comes down to your actual skill level and your personality and how you work. So although there might be that first impression that might be easier if you're a girl, I think it still comes down to, are you a good artist? Will you get the tasks fulfilled? And will you just be a good worker? So
Mhm.
that would probably be what I would say.
So, if anything, at least there's no setback as a female.
Yeah, that's just from what I've seen. I mean, I obviously have a very slanted perception. I'm not a female. I mean, Dee, what would you say if you've even
Well, I don't have much experience yet, but from most of the people I've heard that it is easier if you're a girl. There's just an allure to, I don't know.
I
I
know
don't,
it's hard
I don't
to
know.
say it without trying to be like sexist because it's not at all.
Yeah, no, but I understand. There's an appeal to having like there being a chance to have like more girls in the office. So
Hmm.
it's just take it as a good thing. Okay, by primarily blue we have Tim and D. I don't understand 3 point perspective. How do you even use it?
Oh boy. That is something, it took me a little bit when I was in school to kind of figure it out. It's tough. It's not like an easy, you just kind of pick it up. Some people, I guess, could, but for me, it was definitely a challenge. So I guess I'm probably not the best one to answer this because I rarely do environments, so I never really use 3 point perspective. But I will say, uh, use your vanishing points, make your lines, and if you're doing this traditionally, take the extra time to do the extra work and do all the, like the lining up, making sure everything's, you know, in check, and then go from there. Because I don't think you can. I mean, you can kind of take shortcuts, but for the most part, it just would look better in the end if you did the extra work.
Hmm.
All right, so now really quick. So like I was saying, we're having this dramatic light right here. So I have to imagine everything as acting or could cast a shadow. So like this horn right here that he has on this side, oops, I have to imagine that it's going to be casting a shadow on his wing. So that light direction that I have, I should probably actually move the shadow over because it's not consistent with where I laid the lighting on the head. So I'm just going to quickly do my selection tool, move it over, and then edit it. Because that's the one thing I always try to, be visually aware of is the lighting consistent with how I've laid it out.
All right, by Russell Gomez. Do you have any suggestions for interesting podcasts to listen to while you work? I listen to streams and podcasts like One Fantastic Week, Level Up, Anthony Jones Stream, and of course this stream.
Oh, those are some fantastic ones. I would say the Dave Raposa one is a good one. The Miles Johnston one is another good one. Then I usually watch random streams of artists I really like. So what's her Purple Keklian? I usually watch hers, even if some of her themes might be more adult content, but just the way she lays out color, I still find fascinating. And then RJ Palmer, who does like all the realistic Pokemon. Every now and then he'll do a live stream where he shows off his process.
Hmm.
Which ones do you watch, D?
All of those that you said. I would add Zadig, Alexander Dubois. I like watching his streams as well. And then the random ones that I don't remember like the names of. If I'm watching or like if I'm listening to podcasts, I know I listen to Noah Bradley's videos on YouTube, and they go for like an hour or so. And he gives like good advice in those. And besides that, like not art related, I like listening to Rooster Teeth.
Hmm.
So yeah. Alright. Shelby asks, any tip on doing commissions and getting started in it? I'm scared that they will hate it and be mad at me.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I think you kind of have to get over if you're going to do commissions. And I think even every time I did a commission or every time I do freelance work, I always am slightly nervous because you never know if they're going to like it or not. Like, even if you think it's like the bomb, they might not think so as much. Or even sometimes I've had it where I didn't really like the work I gave them. I just felt like nothing was clicking, but they loved it. So it was one of those things where, I mean, there's different personalities, there's different, people looking at it. So don't feel nervous. I would definitely say if you're doing commissions where you're not on like a time frame, take your time with it and get to the point where you're proud of it. Because if you're proud of it when you send it to them, then you have no reason to be nervous because then you gave them something that you felt was quality and something that if they paid you a commission, they know of your skill level, they know what your art looks like, so should have no reason to complain.
And also, if they're commissioning you in the first place, like they obviously like your work or are interested
Yeah.
in like what you can do. So don't be afraid. And sometimes it will be a hit or miss, but that's how life goes.
Yeah, it's one of those things where there will be times where, the client really won't like it or they'll ask you to redo it. And I guess you got to kind of take it as they come and then decide whether or not it's worth it for you to argue it or for you to just do it,
Mm-hmm. Freezing Light asks, how do you get used to being able to draw your own poses for creatures? I even have trouble drawing a simple Pikachu in my own pose, especially considering the fact that creatures all come in different shapes and sizes.
Oh man, yeah, I actually really like. Did he say Pikachu?
Yeah.
Um, I would definitely say having a references of actual animals helps out a bunch, especially when I'm doing creature work, which I haven't done a lot or I haven't done any recently. But when I would definitely pull up like a bunch of references, and if it was a creature that's not like or an animal that doesn't exist, I would like mash up a bunch of different creatures together. So like the creature that I did a long time ago, it was like a frog mixed with a monkey pose with like extended arms. So you definitely have to think that way. But in terms of like posing them, really think about them as if they are real. Think about like where they would be in the ecosystem, where would they be if, or like how do they move around, what do they eat, what things that the more you think about it, the more life that you give to it, the more that some of those answers will just kind of come about. They'll just, form themselves in your mind. So I would say
Yeah.
for like Pikachu, when I think of Pikachu, I don't think of like the cute like whatever Pikachu. I think of it as like the mouse Pokemon, and it would be like this little scavenger in the forest because that's how what Pikachu originally was. So when I see Pikachu, I see definitely like a mouse, a very skittish little creature. So I would probably pull up references of smaller mice or even like gerbils or something that would give me a pose that's very similar to that. But then if you're feeling like it's getting too much into the realism realm where you definitely want to keep it more cartoonish, there's plenty of animation references that you can kind of look at that involve creatures, especially like DreamWorks has a bunch of movies with animals in them. And I think if you find one that's similar.
At like just watching Pokemon, like and seeing how like he moves around helps a lot.
Oh yeah, that too.
And yeah, just don't be afraid to use like your references. Like look at your dog, like see how he moves around. Like watch cartoons. Like it's all about like observing and like adding that to your knowledge. It's
Hmm.
hard to come up with stuff if you just don't know.
Yeah, every artist pulls from life. I think that's something all artists should keep in mind, especially new ones. Don't feel like it's cheating if you're using reference.
Christy asked, do you ever have a time where you have to go back to basics, even if you're already good at autopilot?
Well, it's funny because since I run the exercises on Concept Cookie, I feel like I do get to kind of challenge myself every other week with something that's kind of more basic, where it's not so much like rendering heavy. It's like the one that's right now. It's all on like value shading. So literally go back to the basics of, am I shading this correctly? So yeah, I would say in a weird way I do, but would I normally? I would probably know if I was honest with you. But is that good? No. I think it's beneficial to always keep those basics in mind and keep practicing them, because then those basic skills are what will translate into the finer pieces down the line. Oh, I'm seeing really quick. Someone's asking what hotkeys did you use to change the brush size really quick.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is one of those 10 tips that every concept artist should know or any digital artist should know. So the way to change your brush size really quick when I swipe left and right is on a Mac, if you hold Control and Option, and then you click down on the tablet, you hold it, and then you swipe it right or left, you change the size of the brush. And then if you go up or down, for this brush it's the opacity, but if you're using the hard edge brush, let me just show you really quick. So if you're using the hard edge brush, if you go up and down, you change the hardness of the brush. So this is such a quick, easy tool or shortcut that I use all the time. So that's definitely one of those I want everyone to know.
I know that helped me a lot when I was first starting Photoshop, being able to adjust the brush size like so quickly.
I feel like it saves so much time.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you're moving your left hand over to the bracket keys.
it feels more natural too in a way.
Hmm. Oh, now it does, yeah, for sure. I don't even think about it now.
Right. D. Brown. Yes. I learned a lot from my life drawing group last week, especially with an overweight model. When I was close to finishing, I wasn't happy with the result. I felt there was something missing, but my mind thought it was done. What can I do to train my brain for more detail?
That's a very good question. I feel like I have one friend that's kind of in that same situation right now where he looks at his work, he's dissatisfied with it, and he wants to fix it. He can point out even what's wrong with it. You just can't figure out how to fix it exactly. So I think that just comes down to like better understanding the tools and becoming comfortable with them, and then visually training your eye, and also figuring out, okay, so what's a good example? So like, okay, this wing right here. If I wanted to add wrinkles to it to give the impression, that they're getting tight because the wing's not open, I I know exactly what I would do. So a lot of digital art is problem solving. So a lot of times you don't think of it as a problem, but like you're presented with a challenge. So like making the light consistent everywhere, and then you have to, as a digital artist, kind of answer that and figure out, okay, what tools do I need to make it? What tools or what techniques do I go about using to fix that? So I think that's one of those things where it'll come with practice. So just keep going, maybe put that one to the side, come back to it. And this is one of the beauties of digital art is a lot of times you'll come back to pieces you did like a year earlier, and like, well, at least you should be able to look at it and be like, man, this is awful. I know I can fix this so much better, make it look so much better now. So I know it can be frustrating at times because especially when you compare your own work with like some of the top name artists out there. I know I did that a lot when I was starting out, but over time that's actually beneficial because then you're striving for that top quality. So just give it time, be patient, and in time it will come.
Kyle Wheelet asked, when learning the planes of the face or body, did you have a favorite book or method that you followed?
Hmm. I wouldn't say there was a book per se. I would say there was a lot of references and visual stuff on the internet. So like even DeviantArt, gosh, I cannot remember what it was, but I remember there was an animation resource. I can't remember what it's called, but it pretty much showed how they did the planes of the face. And even though I'm attracted more towards realism work, I would say that still was able to translate into my own work because I took that and I used it as like a really, it's like a reference almost, and I was able to use the planes of or learn how to angle the head accurately because before it was a lot, and even still to this day, I think some of my work looks a little stiff, but I would say it definitely helped me understand how to loosen it up a little bit. Um, but I guess for body, uh, no, I don't think there was a book that I really used to learn the planes. I think just having reference, or even sometimes if you need a pose of like a specific pose, if it was like sitting down or like doing something specific, taking a reference photo of either yourself or even if you're comfortable enough, having a friend do it for you. Obviously not nude or anything with clothes, but I think sometimes like even exposing or like looking at the arm and really, really analyzing the arm, not only for the surface value, but thinking about the underlying anatomy and the bone structures. Because I think, yeah, it's important to learn the planes of the body, but it's, I would say, more important to learn what's underneath, because then you can kind of have that translate into the planes of the actual body. But yeah, I guess I don't really have a book in mind that I used.
Primarily Blue asked Tim and Dee. Sakura in a later video mentioned the book Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. Did either of you ever use this book? If so, do you believe it works and recommend it to beginner artists?
I've never read it, so I can't give my opinion either way. But I kind of know what it's about. Yeah, I would say that method works if it's very personal though. I would say try it, and then if it's something that works for you, awesome. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. Just move on.
What method is it?
It's
Like,
like so you know how there's the two sides of your brain, the one that's more like methodical and the one that's more like free flowing, artsy. It's kind of like being like the businessman side of your brain and the art side of your brain, like the hippie. And it's kind of letting the hippie take over and like not be so structural with it. Or at least that was the impression I got when I read the synopsis of the book.
hmm. All right. Well, we could look into that later, maybe.
Yeah.
Arita asks, do you ever have days where you dislike everything you draw?
Yes. 2 days ago. And it's one of those things where don't let it stress you out. Where yeah, there's some days where nothing's clicking, and I maybe like once every 2 or 3 weeks there'll just be a day where it's just like awful. I just don't feel good about anything I'm working on, and you'll have them. So don't let those bring you down. Just know, wake up tomorrow, it's a new day. Things might be clicking the next day.
By Alesha Schoen. What kind of personality do you think works best for someone in the art industry? As in, what kinds of people do you see have a better chance at making it in the art world?
That's a really good question.
Mhm.
I would say your personality does take a little bit of an account to it, just because if you're going into an interview, your personality can oftentimes sell the employer, because then they'll know that I'll be working with this person all the time. So if you come across as like funny or outgoing or driven or passionate, that definitely says a lot about you, and then hopefully will translate into your work. Um, I would say though, the people that I've noticed I want to work with more, like the people even just working with the ones that are very organized and are very professional in their mannerisms, but still know how to have fun or like when to joke. So the people that I guess the biggest tips I can tell you here is always email people back within 24 hours. That says a lot about you. Keep communication open and keep it free. If there's something that you're not sure about, ask. There's no need to extend a problem or situation that you're not sure of. It's really just a waste of time. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And for the most part, be lighthearted. If this is just some little thing that I've kind of noticed, if you don't like a particular movie or something that like let's say your coworker does or something, don't like bash it. I mean, you can still give your opinion on it, but don't just belittle it. I think that makes you look like arrogant or pompous. So try to keep that to a minimum as well.
Just being respectful.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Freezing late again. When do you plan on opening up signups for your workshop?
That is a great question because Wes, the CG Cookie kind of head, like the head baker, he has been working on the site, so it will be unveiled soon. I just finished the time lapse for the promo yesterday, so we'll see. But just know that we're still looking for probably a mid-September start date to the actual class. And I'm going to be giving whoever signs up for it homework before the class starts. So don't feel like if I'm giving you work beforehand, I don't know, I think that's just like the like I have to work before it even starts. But it's a good way for me to see like where you're at, what you're comfortable doing. So if you sign up, just keep in mind that you'll probably have an assignment before we start the class.
Evelyn Verberg says, I've been doing commissions for about a year now, but still find it hard not to underprice them. You guys have any advice on how to be more comfortable with the financial part of it all?
Yeah, I actually got yelled at by one of Cycra's friends for pricing too low. And I think I didn't even think about it at the time, but if your quality of work might be higher than what you're selling your stuff for, it's actually harder than for other artists to get commissions. And if you're selling like, let's say, I think I was doing like $20 for something, and the amount of time that I would spend on it, because I had extra time at that point in my life, and it wasn't fair to the other artists that like if they're relying on commission for money, uh, it's just I guess the easiest way to put this is just remember that there are other artists doing the same thing you are. So you have to be aware of like how much are they selling their stuff for, and then be self-aware at like what skill level you are at and what seems like a reasonable price to put it at. And just be confident. I know that sounds really easy to say, but I would say that was even something I struggled with starting out doing commissions because you at the start you're just like I just want any commissions. I want to do some work, but over time I think you need to be more confident with being like okay I'm gonna price my stuff a little higher.
Hmm. It's definitely hard, like setting it at a higher price when you're just starting because you don't feel like worth much, but um, you do kind of like ruin the community by like pricing your commissions so low, so
Hmm.
it's good to be aware of that. Um, and like, I almost feel like you start to become like if you're more confident, you start to become confident in your work, and your work becomes stronger.
Hmm.
I think that is the thing that happens.
Yeah, I agree.
By Russell Gomez again. In terms of presenting a portfolio to potential employers, what do you think is the bare minimum and maximum number of pieces you should have?
I know someone that only had like a few pieces for their job interview and they got the job. So for stuff like this, I would definitely say quality over quantity
Hmm.
and showcase the work that you want to be doing. So like if you are a character artist, you probably don't want to be doing or have a bunch of environment stuff in your portfolio because then when if you get hired there, then they might be thinking, okay, this is a really good environment artist. We're going to give them a bunch of projects with environment stuff. And then if you get it and you might be like, no, I'm more suited for characters, they'll question that. So just be kind of conscious of what you're putting in there. Even though it is quality over quantity, I would still include probably about eight. Eight sounds like a good number where it's not overwhelming, but it still shows a wide variety of your skill and level.
Yeah. You don't want to put too much in there because, everyone likes short and sweet. Like they probably look through portfolios like a bunch at a time. So try to show your skill in like fewer pieces than having like more. Like you can understand like how well a person can work just from like the few, I think.
Yeah, I fully agree with that.
But enough to show that you have variety as well.
All right, so this is something that I do a lot, especially if you're doing something that's straight on. You kind of finish one side, and then you copy and paste it, flip it to the other side, and you have your proportions kind of set in symmetrical, but you definitely want to go in and edit it then. I don't think you should just leave it like this. Then you should go in and make the lighting, feel accurate, and you almost want to mask the fact that you just flipped it. So a lot of times I'll go in and like add lighting to different areas and just make it look better.
Benedict says $20. That is cheap for that level of skill. Would you still do ones, or have you stopped now that you're in concept cookie?
No, I stopped long, long ago. Recently I did do like pixel stuff, but I can't just for the time that I have to invest in it, and I really want to start working on my own personal projects. So I would say no. I probably won't ever go back to commissions unless if something happens with Cookie, but I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Giuliano says, I bought a graphics tablet for my PC and there's so much I want to test. You've got good beginning tips?
Yes. I'm obviously working with it, and try it replacing your mouse for the most part. I would say even when I'm scrolling the internet or like trying to find a movie on Netflix, I'm still using my tablet. I think because the more that you just become familiar with using the tablet and comfortable with it and like knowing how far to move your hand to get to a specific place, I think once you get to the point where it's like autopilot, like you don't even have to think about it, that's the place you want to be at. Um, I guess on some other good things, you definitely want to test like the hardness and soft or what's it called? The firmness, I think it is. Let me check really quick. So you can actually check your whack or your tablet settings, and you can change like the tip feel from soft to firm, and that kind of determines how much pressure you put on the tablet. If you push really hard, you probably want to go more toward a firm, but if you push really soft, you probably want a softer tip feel. I mean, there's other things you can change, but just be aware that you can edit the settings, or even things like there's usually buttons on the pen itself. Changing those to something that you're comfortable with. For me, I always have it. The top one's my right click, and then the bottom one moves the canvas, or it's like the pan scroll. So just I don't know, try it out, see if it works for you, and yeah, have fun. So really quick, for this guy's wings that I have here, I have to give the impression that there's this backlight to it. So what I'm going to start doing, now that I've kind of got sort of a foundation set for this guy even more, so let me show you guys. So this is what we started with. So then I did some like basic clean over pass, and then from here is when I really need to make that backlight more present, more felt. So what I'd probably do is from here, I would go to reliable Google, and then I would just type in like Batwing or something where I can get a good reference for when light. If you can imagine in your head when light shows through a batwing from if it's backlit, you can see through it, and it has that really cool orange, sometimes yellow effect that it can give off. So this is one of those examples where if you have reference, actually let me just pull it on the canvas so you can see. So when you use reference, you're using something that occurs in life and often will give you a better result. So this is another one of those examples where it's like reference isn't cheating if you're using it and being able to imply and integrate it into your own work without just blatantly copying it. Hi guys, this
Alright, Joe Chico's here, and he asks, with the leveling system for Concept Cookie's webpage, will you include a challenge system to give more points? I need to max out my dex and perception stats.
Yes. To be honest, I'm not sure how they're gonna go about. I assume that what we're gonna do is I'm gonna have to go back to all the old exercises and add like some kind of way that you can like submit your exercise and you can get points from that. So we'll kind of see. It should be released within the next couple of weeks. Don't take my word for that, but I'm pretty sure. And I'm really excited because then once we get quizzes and like XP going on Concept Cookie, it will be more exciting, I guess, to complete like the exercises or watch a tutorial.
Should you try to show off different art styles in your portfolio, or is it better to stick to one thing and be good at it? By Evelyn Berber.
That's a really good question. I think it depends on the artist. When I went to portfolio shows to check out possible candidates, I would say I appreciated the different styles, and I think it showcased that they can do a variety. But this is something I remember a friend telling me that you can be a master of one. Oh, what was it? It was something where you can have like you can be a level 5 at everything, but sometimes it's better to just be like a level 10 at one thing. You know, if that comparison makes any sense.
A jack of all trades, but a master of none.
There we go. Thank you. So I think having both is beneficial, but definitely have one that you're like super confident. So if the employer asks you like, what would you enjoy doing, you know right away, and you're like, well, this is what I feel I'm best at and what I'm most comfortable with. Because then usually what you enjoy doing the most, you're going to progress in more than the other things that you're probably not as interested in.
Jonathan Miller says, how do you properly grade your level of artistic expertise? I know I have plenty of room for improvement and very critical of my own work.
Whew. I think it's those things where you have to be aware, very honest with yourself as well. Like I can definitely admit like what are my weaknesses, but at the same time you can't just be, you know, like pity party, very aware of like what are your strengths. So for me, I it could even be just what you enjoy. So I really like working in color. I like doing characters. So I would consider those my strengths. So I would feel more confident if I was given an assignment or a task or a challenge that was a character so much than if it was like an environment. So I guess how do you grade your level? A lot of compare and contrasting. I would say of artists that are, if you're in school, the artists around you, but if you're looking more as a job in the industry, you have to look at like the top name artists and really compare and contrast their work against yours. And that kind of sucks because you're like, well, they're so much better, you know? Like, how can I even compare? But that's the level of skill that you want to obtain, you want to reach. So I think by constantly comparing and contrasting to your own work, slowly but surely you will get to that point. It will take a while because yeah, they have that years of experience on you for the most part. Or usually there's some artists that are super good at a really young age, but for the most part it takes years of experience, and I I would just say don't expect to get really good really fast. It takes time, it takes practice.
Do you know 3D modeling? If so, will you ever make a video about it?
I do know 3D modeling. That's actually what I went to school for. And um, I did enjoy 3D modeling, definitely not nearly as much as I do concept art. I don't think I would ever do a tutorial on it just because of my skill level. I don't think is proficient enough to honestly give a tutorial. I would feel like we would hire someone out to do that. But I will say I am curious with like 3D sculpting software, especially like ZBrush, and I think using that and integrating that into 2D work, that might be something down the line I would want to do a tutorial on.
By Arita. I know that drawing from reference is important, but I've always drawn from my head. Is it necessary to be able to work from reference and not just imagination in order to improve at art?
I'm going to say yes, because oftentimes imagination is just your mind pulling different references that you've either seen or you're like mashing up different things that you've seen, like even if they never exist. The picture that you're getting from it, the colors that you see, it's all based on something that either you've seen or you've even experienced. Sometimes experiences can bring about inspiration. But I would say working from reference directly, like right now I have a few images on the side of my main image, and I think it's very helpful to be able to look at it and even just see like how the lighting affects it, because then your mind has to do less like skipping over itself. Like it's not struggling as much if you have that direct reference being like, this is where the light would shine, this is how intense it would give the reflection. So even like having this bat wing up right now, it's really helpful for me to even like color pick from it, and I definitely think being able to use reference will increase the quality of your work.
And we have two questions that are similar to each other, so I'll put them together. Um, do you ever have days where you feel like drawing everything you draw just isn't good enough and you dislike it? Do you have any tips on getting out of an art slump? And another question that's similar is, what would you suggest is a good way to break through an art block? I've been going through one for like 3 months and I'm starting to come to hate drawing.
Ooh, 3 months is a long time. I would, like I said earlier, there was like 2 days ago where I felt like nothing I was doing was that good. And I think I just have learned this through time, where oftentimes the next day I'll be fine again. So I think that calms my nerves of just realizing like, oh, well, tomorrow I'll probably be back on track. But I mean, a 3 month one is kind of long. Like that would be insanely long to the point of where I could understand where you might not even enjoy drawing anymore. Oftentimes, if you really just need something to break what's going on, I would say try drawing with friends. Do something out of the ordinary, draw something out of the ordinary, and over time, I think hopefully you'll get back into the swing of things. Because I can't promise that you'll get out of it, and I think it would be bad if I said, oh, you'll eventually just get out of it. Because I think, yeah, sometimes you do get in art blocks and they're hard to pull out of. But for the most part, I would say just don't let it stress you out. Keep working, keep pushing through, and hopefully in time you'll get over that art slump that you're in.
If this is something you want to do for the rest of your life, then you'll find a way to push through it. And or it might be a time where you find out that you don't want to do it for the rest of your life. You just have to think of it that way. Like, do you want it enough?
That's tough. All right, so really quick, something important is you should also be rotating your canvas a lot, or flipping it horizontally, and that's because then you can see it at different angle. Like right now, I didn't see it from the other angle, but right now I can see like this tooth horn right here seems to be lower than the other one, where the other one I'd probably want to lower it just a tad so it's more in symmetrical in alignment with each other. So there's little things like that you'll see that you don't see from one perspective. Now, I know we're already getting to the hour point, but what I wanted to show you guys with like this kind of dramatic lighting. So now that I have like this light that's kind of built through, I'll probably spend a little more time building it up and just making it more. But what I want to do is I want to add some rim lights inside of here. So I'm going to grab this really light, so it's this color right here. I'm going to work on the inside edges of this kind of tear in the wing. And now it's important, like even though that this area is in shadow, since the light is coming from behind, there's going to be this little ridge where the highlight will be seen on the inside, and it'll be up here as well. So I think I would have to probably intensify all of my rim lights that I've kind of placed in on this character. But then what I would probably do is make another new layer, and I would do an overlay and a multiply layer. So first I would start with an overlay. So let's go ahead. So like right away you'll see the intensity kind of shine through. And that's why I like to save it till after I've laid out my base colors and my foundations on top. Because then from here, it'll get pretty saturated pretty fast. So I gotta be a little conscious of the way I'm laying it out. Now, this wing, I probably need to do actual more rendering so it's more cohesive with the other wing. But the other thing that I would probably do is then I would grab this blue color, and then I would work it on the shadow areas, and then just on the entire piece itself. But I would make it a little more stronger in the shadow areas. And that contrast is what will start to give that dramatic lighting feel. So like already, if you can imagine the rim lights that I have on his head, and actually I'll do it before the stream ends, but I'll make them more intense, and just by making that sliver of light so much more intense, it'll really make the lighting that much more dramatic. So I guess if you guys have any more questions, feel free to ask them now. We'll probably take like I don't know, like 5 more, and then we'll cut the stream off. So send them in now. Deandra will, get a few of them ready, and we will kind of rapid fire through them. And hopefully we can get through even more than 5 if we can do them quick enough.
Okay. By Christine Mathave. Whenever I do line art for hair, it looks just fine. The problem is when I paint over the hair, it looks very stiff and has no flow to it. How do I make the hair flow when I paint?
That's a good question. I would say painting in shapes. So don't make your hair thin like straw. Like I think that was something I got myself trapped into when I was still in school, where you definitely want to give the hair a fluid motion to it, even if it's simple, or even sometimes with guy hair it can be a little tougher because you're not working with the length that you sometimes have with female hair. And with female hair, I feel like it's a little more interest, more of that, I think, shape language that you're trying to go for. So if it's looking very stiff, try to just put a little more flow into it. Try to work in shapes, clump it together a bit, and then hopefully that'll help.
By Primarily Blue. When it comes to line art, any tips on inking your sketch? Do you also use the brush tool in Photoshop to ink the traditional way, or a line tool?
In all honesty, I don't ink anything. I might have outlined a few things when I was in school, but for the most part, I don't trust my line art ability as much as I trust my shading ability. But I would probably use the brush tool as well, or not. I would probably even use a different software. Where, as much as I love Photoshop, I think not having that line smoothing tool ready at your disposal kind of hurts for the like shading or not shading, doing line art, really clean line art. So, and I think there is a tool if you're on a PC. It's called Lazy Nuzumi, but if you're on a Mac, there still isn't one available for the Mac. So if you're like me and you only have Mac computers, it'd probably be better if you switch to like Mischief or Paint Tool Sai, or a program that does give you the ability to have cleaner line art. Or heck, if you are comfortable with the brush or the line tool, then use that. But it's one of those that I've never been comfortable with, so I just wouldn't recommend.
Are there any workshops with a physical location, conventions, and such that you would recommend flying out to or would like to go if you had the chance?
Oh God, yeah. There's one by Alan Williams in October. It's on the West Coast, I believe, in Washington, and I would love to go to that one. He's like my drawing hero at the moment, and I think having that in-person experience can sometimes be so much more, I would say, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's only a weekend, so I don't know how much content I could improve on or how much learning ability I could get in one weekend. But I think just having someone that really knows their stuff be able to look at your work and have that one-on-one time is really important. So that one I would really love. The CGMA ones, I think Deandra, I know, is probably taking one next quarter. One was taught by Ryan Lang a little while ago, and I really look up to him as well. So I think if you find artists that are running workshops that you admire, I would say do your best to join them, because having that one-on-one experience with them, it really is unforgettable, and it will hopefully improve your skill set that much more.
I know there's like that Massive Black like almost convention. There's like tons of workshops by probably plenty of artists that you're familiar with. I've always wanted to go to that.
Oh, Spectrum. What am I saying?
Oh yeah.
Spectrum was
Mhm.
amazing. That was probably the best. That was one of the best experiences in my life, where not only are you surrounded by high-end profile artists, but then on like Friday night at midnight, there's a life drawing session where you're literally drawing next to your heroes, and it's casual and it doesn't feel imposed or it doesn't feel like there's pressure. It's just very comfortable, and it was amazing. So I would definitely recommend going to Spectrum if digital art interests you.
By Pyro Healthcare. With so many skilled people painting the same kinds of things that I like to paint, how do I better make my art stand out?
That's a tough one. Because I actually agree with you where I think a lot of artists do fall kind of in the same category, and it is hard to stand out. And sometimes it just you just have one of those lucky breaks where it turns out superb, and I think that will make you stand out. But I don't think there's like one quick fix tip I can give you to help you with that. I would say do your best to stand out. Try something a little different, even if it's just the subject matter. Something as simple as that kind of a change could.
Yeah, experiment. Don't be
Yeah,
afraid to try things that other people haven't.
because it's one of those things where like I see like artists that are primarily like anime, if you want to call them that, artists. Like I feel like they all very much tend to stick to the same subject matter, the same style, the same techniques, and they do kind of blend together. Where it is kind of even hard to distinguish them at sometimes. So I think having at least being able to recognize that you're trying to stand out is good, because then you're able to see that. But then now is the hard task of like problem solving, which like I kind of was saying before, figuring out, okay, now how do I stand out in this crowd?
Yeah, like if you like drawing the same subject as everyone else, like try a different coloring technique or, you know, anything like that.
hmm
It's hard, for sure. If it was something that was easy,
Oh yeah.
then
Who said that? If it was easy, it wouldn't be worth doing.
mm,
Or everyone would be doing it. Oh, I forgot the quote.
sounds familiar.
All right, so like I was saying before, I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit, and I'm gonna choose actually I'm gonna choose a skin brush for this, make it really small. So I'm going to grab this orange right here. But now, I know you guys can't see my color picker, but I'm making it pretty saturated. I'm going pretty high on the value. So it's pretty close to white, but it still has that color tint to it. What I'm going to be doing is kind of outlining the face a little bit. I'm trying not to make it just a solid, same width or thickness, weight line all the way through. Give it some variation to add some interest. But first I'm going to do this, and then I'm probably going to do either a color burn or an overlay layer on top of this to really make that color pop. To impression that this rim light is really intense and there's light behind it. Behind him, I should say. Okay, sorry, you can keep going with the questions.
Okay. Uh, what books do you usually use to study anatomy? What can you recommend? Also, next year's SoccerCon in Seattle, Washington. Will you be there? By Honey Rose.
Um, Study Anatomy. So this one I always recommend. It's by I'm going to write down his last name right here. Let me look behind me to make sure that's correct. Oh, no, that's not correct. Sorry. Savardi. Why do I always think it's Savani? Um, his name's Giovanni Savardi, and his anatomy books are like by far my favorite anatomy books. And that's because they don't use bodybuilder models. They use very lanky, very, in my opinion, very realistic interpretations of what the human anatomy is. So he has a few books, but the favorite that I have is Drawing Human Anatomy, it's called. And it's just a really solid book that carries a lot of anatomy that I feel holds true to a life. So his book for sure. What Sakura Khan? I've never even heard of that one. I feel like Deandra is like my go-to convention knowledge person. Have you heard of this one?
Yeah, I have. I have never gone because it's so far, but I
I
would.
feel like it is a possibility because I know we've been
Think.
kind of road tripping lately.
Hmm.
So it's possible. If you give me more details, I could probably look into it. I know I have a friend out in Washington, so it would be kind of a nice trip for me too, because then I can see him. Okay, now really quick. Okay, so he has this horn thing kind of jutting out under his eye. It's like the cheek region. So by just giving a subtle line right here, it'll really help push that form forward. Because you can see now, this gives the viewer knowledge that this horn thing, I don't even know, I'll just call it like a boar tusk thing. And it really gives the impression that it's pushed forward over the facial area, because if it's able to catch this light, that means that the direction that an angle that it would have to be out to catch the light is jutting out pretty far. So little things like that just keep in mind while you're working as well. Okay, sorry, back to the questions.
By Kuto Seta, or Seta. When I'm using a reference, I'm able to draw, but as soon as I try to draw by head, it simply can't go the way I want it to. What should I do?
It will. Just through time and practice, it will. Because I know even for a while I had to keep references of like, even for this example, when I was doing human faces, I had to keep references up on the side just because every now and then I'll be like, would the shadow appear under the nose in this area? And I would look to my reference really quick, and then it would be, okay, yeah, it does. I don't think it's healthy to rely on it very heavily. I think and I have to start analyzing things for yourself, and then it will translate. So just keep your references as like a quick tip reference. Don't keep it as like I guess what's the best way to explain this?
I would say like it's almost like preparing for like a test or something like
I was just about
before.
to say like an open book test.
Yeah, like you just have to keep like studying until you memorize it, really. And then you can do it on your own without like the help of references.
Yeah. So it's like it is kind of like an open book test, but first challenge your own knowledge, and if you really don't know, then refer to the open book.
Yeah.
So now here's another example of where there's a hole in his wing, so the light would be hitting this part of the horn, but then it would kind of stop a little bit, because then we have this right here that would be casting the this direction. Way of like constantly thinking of keeping it consistent.
By Mr. Flopsy. When doing things like photo studies, I always end up picking all the colors from the reference photo. So I still have a lot of problems choosing my own colors on my own art. Any tips so that I can choose better colors?
It sounds kind of like the last question where you might be relying on the color picking too much, where really analyze the colors that you're laying down. So for me, without even thinking about it, I mean, I guess for most artists, you know that like what color complements each other. So like blue, orange, purple, yellow, red, green. So that's like the very fundamentals. But then you also have to start thinking about like the hue, saturation, and value of the colors. And I think a lot of times if we think, okay, I need to add a green to this area, you can't just pick a random green. You have to look at the area that you're going to be placing the green in, really look at the colors around it. Is this green going to complement that color? Is this green more saturated than the colors around it? And then that would make it stand out more. Do you want this color to stand out more? So I think the more that you really analyze the colors that you're choosing and when you're laying them down, the better your color choosing will eventually be, where you don't even have to think about it as much.
All right, we're almost done with the questions.
Okay.
We have about 4 more.
All right, good.
By Giuliano. I have so much energy, ideas flow, and see the pictures already in my head, but I do not get it on paper as I see it in my head. If you slowly draw sketches at the beginning, will it help?
Yeah, I think Psychra just did a video tutorial on this about how, or maybe it wasn't Psychra, but like doing thumbnails will help improve your work so much more, just because of you're getting your ideas out, and sometimes the first impression or the first thing you lay down might not quite hit it as accurate in your head. So that's why doing maybe a few of them first and then running with it, that's probably a better um, way of getting the exact idea what you have in your head down.
And Zoe Delenn asks, I'm still pretty young and I do know that I want to be some kind of game artist when I'm graduated, so what kind of things would be nice to make for my portfolio?
Is this in high school or is this in college?
By pretty young, I would probably guess,
High school?
I think. They didn't specify.
Well, if it's high school, definitely getting a tablet, getting some kind of software installed. I know Photoshop can be pretty pricey, but if you can swing it, I would definitely recommend Photoshop, just because I would say it is the most widely used professional software out there. But that's not to say you can still get the same results with the other software that that's available. Uh, the other thing is definitely becoming comfortable with the tablet. The kids that in my school, when I went to school in college, the kids that knew Photoshop beforehand and like was comfortable with the tablet definitely exceeded the ones that didn't. So for me, I felt like I was kind of gimped because I didn't even know what a tablet was until like the end of the first year of college. So I think having that preliminary knowledge is definitely to your benefit. All right, now really quick, I'm just gonna make a new layer. I'm gonna change it to overlay. Then I'm going to lay it on this outline that I have here. And I don't have to worry if it goes over on the black, because the black really won't be affected as much because it's black. It won't get any color change for the most part. Now, even right now I can kind of tell it's a little too orange, but I can change that after I lay it out. And I might even do a color burn on this too. And sometimes like you'll have an idea of what exactly to do, but until you actually play it out and like test it, you'll never know. So if you're curious about trying to get a particular look, just test it out, and if you don't like it, you can delete the layer. That's like the beauty of digital art.
Yeah, I agree. It's almost sad when I go back to like traditionally drawing and then I realize I can't use layers or the undo button.
I fully agree with that. Although, do you ever feel like you're in a state like right now? I kind of feel like my pencil skills are actually better than my digital art skills. And I don't know if this is something that anyone ever really talks about, but making that transition of making both of your levels, either traditional or digital, kind of match each other.
I don't know. I haven't drawn traditionally in a while, so I can't really say for myself,
Okay.
but I get what you're saying. Oh, she said she's 15 now and she has Photoshop and a tablet for. She's had both for 2 to 3 years.
Then I would tell her she's ahead of the game. And you'll definitely, if you keep practicing with it, you'll definitely have an advantage over the other students.
If you want to be a game artist, just look at what kind of work game artists are doing. Like if they're doing or like what kind of company you want to work for, and like start making that and get good at that.
Hmm.
Um,
I feel like all game artists kind of have a company in mind that they kind of want to work for when they get into the program. I think mine is probably more obvious that it was like Square Enix or Squaresoft at the time, and I really liked Final Fantasy and that kind of style. So I try to emulate it to my ability and like doing my own stuff. So if you definitely have a company in mind, keeping your work similar to that is, I would say, important.
mhm.
All right, I just color burned this, and I think it's actually a little too heavy, where it actually kind of detracts from the piece itself. So sometimes you might have a good idea in your head, but if it is becoming too distracting, just delete it. Because if it bothers you now, it'll bother you in the future, 5 days from now, when you're selling it at a convention. So I think uh, if there's ever something that you add that you really have this gut reaction that you don't like it, don't keep it, because then it'll always bother you. That's the way I've always looked at it.
Tim, I did some of your value practices and they seem really helpful. I'm wondering if starting to paint backgrounds first, then people, or the other way around.
Um, Does he mean like on the same composition? Because definitely background first and then people. But if like you're just talking like in general, you want to draw both, but you don't know which one to do first, uh, that's a tough question because I feel like I would assume a lot of my character ability would translate to environments, but I don't feel it does as strongly. So if we had an environment artist here, maybe I could kind of compare and contrast how they feel about it too. But I would say whichever you're most passionate about, do that one first.
Mm.
Okay, let's take like just a couple more and then we're gonna cut this one off. We're reaching. I feel like now the streams are just gonna become an hour and a half long.
An
Um, so yeah, we'll just do.
hour
Well,
is pretty short to like getting
yeah,
a piece finished.
I guess let's do two more questions and I'm gonna quickly give you guys some information about what's going on Concept Cookie right now.
Um, Alright, by Benedict. He's the one that asks if we could sum up what we
Oh,
did. But his second question is, any tips for drawing snow flurries or dark storm clouds?
the reference for sure, and not only reference, but reference artists that have already done that challenge and kind of see how they interpreted it, and see if there's things that you agree with, things that you can take away with, or things that you think you could improve on. Um, I think just trying to do it straight from your head is an extreme challenge that probably won't give you the best result, just because having that physical reference in front of you will give you a better idea of what it does look like. So I guess that would be my advice. And then I know if you're the one that said, what did we do in the half hour? So I just kind of talked about dramatic lighting, answered questions, and for the most part, just had a good time.
Mm. Alright, last question by Alessia Showen. I hope I'm saying that right. When it comes to professional art, especially in the media industry, do you think it's more important to focus on digital art or traditional? I personally want to do storyboard art, which I believe uses both kinds.
That's a good question. To be honest, I've never worked in like an animation studio, or I've never even been in a game art company. I've worked with CD Cookie right out of school. I can't tell you which is a better medium to work with because I hear animation people that still work traditionally first for like storyboards, especially for storyboards. But then
Even
there's some houses though, like DreamWorks, I feel like has a lot of digital storyboards. So I don't know. What would you say, D?
well, just from like looking at all the art books we've been like collecting, there still is like a lot of traditional like concept sketching, especially for storyboards.
Mhm.
I'd probably just want I would for myself if I was going. in that direction, I'd want to be well versed in both.
Yeah, that's probably the best thing you can do. Because then, no matter what animation studio you go to, you'll be fine.
Hmm.
All right.
It's a tough one. Okay.
Okay. So I want to thank you guys all for coming. So if you guys, like I said in the beginning, if you weren't here, Concept Cookie will be having a booth at Wizard World, which is in kind of the Chicagoland area, and we will be there all 4 days, and we will be selling the Art of Blender books along with my own personal prints and collections. And uh, for those wondering about the workshop, we will be giving more information soon. And just know that we are working on the website. We're working on all the marketing stuff. So if this is something that's interesting you, keep your, the next week or two, be aware of when we actually release it so you can sign up, because we're only taking 25 or 26 students, I believe. And then we're going to cut it off there because I really want to be able to spend time with each person. I don't want it to become saturated where I can't, I really feel like I can't give a quality experience to each student. But I feel like with 25, I could. So if that's something that interests you, definitely be looking forward to that. And I think that's all the big stuff for now. Yeah, I think we're good. All right. Thank you guys for coming to this live stream. We do these every Wednesday at 2 p.m. That's Central Time and -5 GMT if you're outside of the States. And hopefully I'll see some of you guys this weekend. And with that, I'm going to peace out. So bye, guys.
Goodbye, everyone.